Well, welcome everybody. This is Real Career Talk. I'm here with my buddy Preston, and we're going to talk a little bit about his journey and what brought him into his particular career. So, you ready for this?
Sure am.
I love it. So, if you could start off, tell me a little bit about yourself. If you could tell me what you do for your particular career, and maybe just even a few fun things about yourself too.
Sure. Yeah, so for my vocation, I happen to work as an executive chef. I serve at Century Insurance. I'm contracted through a company called Urest. We largely do corporate dining, so Century being a large corporation. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, we feed roughly, for those that participate, around 2,700
Wow.
Century associates each day. So, but some fun facts, I guess, about myself. I enjoy running, which thank you for joining me this morning.
Absolutely.
Got a nice tour of the town with the new snow out there. So,
Exactly. Good way to kick us
um,
off for the morning, huh?
mm-hmm. Yeah, otherwise, I love to run. I'm a new dad, just like you. So,
Exciting.
very excited about that. It's something that I've wanted for the last couple of years, and the Lord finally answered that prayer. So,
That's
very excited.
We're excited for you.
Yes. Otherwise, I love the outdoors. Running being one of them. I like sunsets largely. Just a great opportunity for me, anyway, to really admire the Lord's creation and just to see the sheer beauty of it all. It's
Mm,
just like one way the earth cries out His glory.
absolutely.
So sunsets are awesome, and I'm a big family man. So anytime an opportunity I can get being with family, either side. Usually they say the in-laws. Oh, well, hope you got a good relationship with your in-laws, and I've been very fortunate and blessed that I've got wonderful in-laws. I love being around them. So,
It's fantastic.
hmm
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing. Um, Tell me a little bit about your journey into being an executive chef.
hmm
Just your educational path. Where did it start? Were you anticipating being an executive chef?
sure.
Can you give me the lowdown on that?
Yeah. So, um, all the time that I have spent in food service, anyhow, has accumulated to be about 8 years in length. I started in food service when I came to college. Um, Needed a job and something easy that I was very familiar with
Mhm.
was cooking. Something that I grew up with. Being in a divided home, both of my mothers were uh, very persistent in me knowing how to cook and took on kind of the responsibility of doing so on numerous occasions. And um, so it was a comfortable transition for me to find place of employment at the university for
Mhm.
dining services. And yeah, I grew on to like it as a job actually very early on. Just the people that you work with, and you kind of get the perception and connotation of what food service and culinary looks like and sounds like, for that matter. A lot of times, the more professional you get, the raunchier it can get, and just the more intense it can be, for that matter, as well. Can kind of be an intense climate,
Sure.
but all of which that I have worked in kind of puts that to rest. So it's been, I guess it's one thing that really lured me in a little bit more, because you might see a Dave Ram or not Dave Ramsey. He's in the wrong profession.
Finance.
Oh, good grief,
Gordon Ramsay,
Gordon
the other
Ramsay,
the
the
other
other
Ramsay.
Ramsey. Uh, you can kind of see some personality traits that maybe you wouldn't want to work in, but
Mhm.
um, so yeah, I started when I was at the university, and I graduated with a degree in political science, which you might have some questions how I got to where I am now.
Makes
Uh,
perfect sense.
yeah, 2 plus 2 is 4, right? Or so they say.
So they say.
Um, but yeah, I didn't necessarily think I had a long term goal of being where I am now. Like, if you'd have asked me where I'd be in 5 years back when I was in college, I'd be like, I don't know. I hope I'm married at least.
uh,
So, yeah, I waited for my wife to graduate to kind of decide what I was going to do exactly. So I stayed at the university for the dining services, just comfortable, was succeeding there, growing there. And it got to a point where I feel that I was like I wanted to stay in food service, but at the same time too, there's not a lot of opportunity, at least with a lot of the desires that I had for to try to balance, have a work life balance.
Hmm.
Um, when you get into restaurants and stuff like that, the hours are inconsistent. You're getting called in because people call out. Um, you're working weekends, nights, holidays. It's pretty common.
Sure.
Food is a basic human right. Everyone's got to eat, and food ain't going nowhere. So,
Exactly.
there's always mouths to feed, and it doesn't matter the time of day. Restaurants are open. So I was like, well, I've got it made where I'm at the university, but I was looking to leave because I wasn't growing, and I really wanted to grow.
Sure.
So it was about sheesh, you have to ask my wife. It was a long time. I think it was like a 3 or 4 month period. I was really investing in putting in resumes to see what other line of work I could get myself into, not really knowing what's out there. But I
Mm.
wanted, I figured I was worthy of some sort of managerial position.
Sure.
Yeah, and it was a long process. It was somewhat frustrating because it just seemed opportunity after opportunity, so I thought I had,
Mm.
just the Lord just closing every door and just made it apparent that you know that's not what He has for me.
Sure.
So as much as what I thought uh, I'd be doing in life, uh, as much as that might come into consideration and matter, ultimately I think the Lord directed me to where I am now. So I had a good coworker of mine. I was with at the university. She had moved on to work for Urest, that's there at Century.
Sure.
She had left for a couple of months, and I think she swooped up somebody else too. And she was looking at me. She's like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "Well, I already put in, I don't know, 20 different applications, and none of them are turning up. So why not try this place? If the Lord will allow it, I'm sure He'll make that apparent." And lo and behold, I ended up getting my foot in the door there, and they were very gracious to me too. Um, but especially, it came on very quickly, working through URES there, that there was immediate room opportunity to grow within the
Mm.
company. So that was very attractive because I felt I kind of reached a limit when I was at the university on full time staff.
Sure.
Plus the way that their bureaucracy works through the state, uh, budgets only happen once a year. So you kind of got to make the budget work and make it happen, and you can only have certain positional changes, if the budget allows it. So it could have happened, but maybe not as fast as I was hoping for. Um, but you know, speed isn't always key. But I guess it kind of is in the food service. You
Right.
kind of
Right.
want to get your food on time.
I suppose. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess long story short, didn't really see myself being here, but I'm certainly glad I am. So
Absolutely.
a lot of trust and faith that the steps that were taken to be to be working and serving in the position I am, I'm fully entrusting that that's what God has me doing. So.
No doubt. Well, that's super cool. And you shared too just how both of your parents, kind of helped cultivate,
Hmm.
shape that desire within you to, to, I guess, fend for yourself in terms of cooking food and so forth, and then working there throughout the university, even though you were pursuing a political science
Hmm.
degree. Um, I think that's kind of cool too. Just how sometimes it can be some sort of skill um, or creative interest, and that can spiral. Who knows which way? Whether that be a side hobby or in your case, it can be a full blown career too.
Hmm.
So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I guess in terms of education, you mentioned political science.
Hmm.
Could you talk a little bit about, I guess, why you chose political science at first, and
Hmm.
then you already shared a little bit how you transitioned into food services, just working at the university.
Yeah.
But what initially prompted you to go that route?
Yeah. So actually, political science wasn't my first choice. It
Oh
ended up
wow.
being my second choice.
Okay.
In high school, Boy, I was a busybody. Boy, boy, boy. If I wasn't doing sports, I was in some sort of club. And some people might not consider show choir a sport, maybe more of a club, but by
Yeah.
golly, it's a time commitment, and it's you got practices and stuff like that. You darn near call it a sport. It's pretty physical, singing and dancing,
Right?
competitively for that matter too.
Wow.
So, but I had a great passion for music, especially show choir. Um, Maybe wasn't the best of dancer, but boy, did I love dancing. So I was thinking at first maybe choreography,
Mm,
but then really looking at programs and where I wanted to be, comfort level from being away from home. Stevens Point was really a place of interest. It was either Point or Eau Claire. That was kind of like the where my parents lived. They were the middle ground for either of those
mm.
campuses. Didn't get word back from well, I kind of blame my student counselor from high school for this, but little did I know she didn't send my ACT score over to Eau Claire like I had asked.
Oh no.
So I only got word back from Point, and I was approved. So it's like, well, Point's where I'm going. So being in the music department, in the programs, um, I joined band late in high school. I really loved playing the trombone, picked it up really quick. So I actually had intention going into college, wanting to leave with degrees in choral and instrumental education.
Wow. Okay.
Both of them, little did I know, uh, high school. Depending on the type of high school you go to, I was in a pretty smaller one. Uh, you gotta be talented,
Mm,
and it came. It was apparent that I wasn't as qualified to be in the programs, which hurt
mm,
because I loved music and I thought I was, good enough for it anyhow. So that kind of killed that dream
mm,
early on. I put in like an application. You had to do a couple of solos and stuff to get in, or to get into the program, and I wasn't admitted upon going to college, so I just did my general education courses, and I'd figured, come for the spring semester, I'll re-audition, and it was like the night before I was supposed to re-audition for at least for the choral department to get in for that major. I felt I had, pressed within my heart, the Lord pressing in on me, like, which is going to be better to serve me.
mm,
um, is it more self gratifying for me uh, to do music, or would I better serve the Lord if I did politics? So at that point in time, I felt that it was more selfish ambition for me to go through music, and it was more uh, self giving
mm.
to do politics, because at least the way that I envision, if I were to be a politician, you get the whole corrupt side of things, which is what it is. But
Right.
maybe I'm just too ignorant and pure of heart to think that I could do a positive change, to where I have in my mind a servant's heart and attitude toward people, to where that would be my heart in politics. So that's where I my bent was that night. I I did away with that audition, and I mushed forward on the path of political science.
Oh, okay.
So,
Wow.
but then from political science to where I'm at, I really can't distinguish a line other than if anybody understands the political climate that we're in. Um, Maybe I'm a little selfish in the sense of not wanting to tarnish my name. Um, Getting beaten, battered up with the hostility that is on either platform, whether if
Mhm.
you're independent or not. That certainly it's you're kind of throwing yourself out there to get eaten alive. So
Right.
um, I guess I'd kind of hope for the climate to tame down a bit. Maybe it's not as heated, or um, but yeah. So I kind of shied away from putting my name out there and really getting invested politically, just for the sake of not wanting to tarnish my name or,
Sure.
you know, family. They say the two things you can't talk about at family gatherings is religion and politics, right?
Right.
And I'd rather talk about both, but, in most cases, maybe it's not the best idea just for the sake of keeping and making peace. But that was a kind of another thing too, is that, there's a good number of my family that's pretty well invested politically, that have, deep, and I don't blame them. They've got deep convictions.
Mm,
But I know that, that does come with its complications and disagreements, and then there's a sense of wanting to avoid that as well. So
right.
it was just comfortable to stay with food, and I did well at it. Well, I guess maybe I'm still doing well at it. Maybe you can tell me.
Executive. Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of, like I said, I kind of shied away, kind of skirted
Mhm.
to stay with food, and lo and behold, yeah, I'm at where I'm at. So
Exactly. Opportunities arose, and then you're able to take the next best step.
hmm
It's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing. Um, as far as college is concerned for the food industry
hmm
and a potential career ladder, you mentioned you're an executive chef.
yeah,
Um, and coming from the food services industry, you said 8 years
hmm they're
currently.
about. Hmm
And would you say that someone needs to go to college necessarily to be where you're at or to achieve success in
Sure.
food services?
Yeah, it depends on the line of cooking you're talking about. As far as the line of cooking that I do, not as necessary. Um, but if you're looking for more exquisite, plating and
Sure.
presentation and, fine dining, I'd imagine so.
Okay.
Especially in my position, or at least somebody with a good deal of experience.
Mm.
Um, I lean to prioritize experience over the paper,
Sure.
not to discredit, college or academia or anything like that.
Right.
Um, but there's a difference between book smarts and having your hands like actually in the food.
Mm-hmm.
Two completely
With
different
gloves,
worlds.
hopefully.
Well,
So yeah.
yes, yes,
Just wanted to clarify.
always food served.
Uh,
So, but what is nice about the company I do work for, though, is that even though the majority of us don't have degrees,
sure.
there is a test that we do upon hiring
Okay.
that I happen to not have to complete myself. So maybe I'm not qualified, but I'm just an imposter.
Yeah.
But there's a chef's test that's been compiled, that to really draw out, those that are interested, viable candidates to be in that position, to really test where we're at culinarily.
Mm,
If there's the knowledge with the experience, because it looks at how to cook food, the terms and definitions for styles and types of cutting, and how to assess recipes and fat loss, and how
mm.
do you assess that into your product cost. So there's a lot of things that, as much as food seems simple, the further up the ranks you get, the more you really have to understand the type of food you're working with, how that complements with certain other foods, and how to present that well, and how to serve it safe, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And even assessing the team that you have, whether you can trust them to see that meal is coming to fruition, working hands-on training, all that type of stuff. So um,
absolutely.
in terms of, like you're asking, with college, is a requirement? No. Certainly it is a benefit. uh, you know all those things that I mentioned, in terms of, that is knowledge to be had, and in
Mhm.
my opinion expected of a person in my position. Certainly you get that out of culinary school,
Mm,
and that can kind of vary between a 2 year and 4 year program, depending the complexity and the depth that
sure.
you want to get out of it. um, Communications for me is a big thing. I happen to minor in it. I was gonna be a double major, uh, but looking at the cost of college, is like, get me out of here. I ain't paying that.
Right.
I'm not made of much, so that's gonna be a big bill to pay. So I did at least minor in it, and just and I'd maybe even argue to some degree too, poli sci, graduating in that there's an element of learning how to balance ideas,
Mm,
right? You got to be able to approach somebody with a differing point of view,
right.
and be able to navigate that in a sense to compromise. Because in some degree, politics you got to be able to compromise. I mean, otherwise you end up with a dictatorship, right? It's kind of
Exactly.
my way or the highway. And there are people in my shoes in restaurants that it is cutthroat. It's my way or the highway. I happen to be more of a, inviting of ideas, wanting to be innovative and
Mm,
encouraging and seeing what really makes my team tick. Um, so yeah, I
that's
don't know if that
great.
answers your
Yeah,
question.
that's some really good nuggets, if I
Mm.
may say, of wisdom. So not chicken nuggets though. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. The career ladder.
Hmm.
What does that look like in the culinary services industry? And you mentioned you touched on some of the skills and traits, but could you maybe unpack that a little bit further too? I don't know if you could tackle both, or
Sure.
if you want to go back to back though.
Yeah, I can kind of start and kind of talk about them interchangeably in terms of the ladder
Sure,
and kind of the tasks
that would be great.
that are kind of assigned to each. I happen to speak a little bit more again from the corporate dining side of things, depending on the type of you know restaurant that you are. The service that you are is going to change and vary a little bit in terms of who's doing what.
Mm,
Um, you know, especially in my sense as an executive chef, a lot of times you it is fair to assume that the executive chef is on the floor and is like the person that decides whether or not it's worthy to be served or not.
mm,
Um, the way that it's kind of worked out in corporate dining, we start on the bottom. We just call them team members. Whether they're a cook, their front of house staff, the cashiers, our dish attendants.
mhm.
Um, so, I mean, of course, dishwashers are washing dishes. They understand all the chemicals that are being used to use them appropriately. That they're using the right proportion distilled so that dishes are being washed safe. The cashiers, they're keeping everything nice and clean up front. We're really wanting to have a warm and welcome space, because it's as if we're inviting you
Exactly.
into our home every day, and we want to impress you so that you keep coming back, right? Uh, so obviously the floor always looks nice, and try to approach each guest, promptly,
Hmm.
that we're serving you, as readily as possible, handling cash and the like. Um, and then our cooks, they really they're the hands of the whole operation.
Right.
Um, I like to say that they're the hands and the feet, and I'm just the mind, or at least maybe they're the hands. My chef managers are the feet because they're seeing that we're getting there, and then maybe I'm the mastermind. But anyhow, our cooks, yeah, they really are pay attention to the details. They're working more, especially with the safety of the food. They want to that they're doing the daily production. They're working with the recipes. They know what quantities they're doing, making sure that we're not cross contact, with allergens or contaminating food with raw proteins. That there's really an awareness that needs to be had that bacteria isn't growing or food's not staying out for too long, and food's being cooked up to the proper temperature, that we're only holding it for a certain amount of time, or at the end of the day we have food that needs to be cooled down at the end of the day. That food's being cooled to the proper temperatures, monitoring and maintaining temperature logs. There's a lot. It's not
Yeah.
that we're just putting a knife on the cutting board and a spatula on the flat top. I mean, there's a lot of monitoring that needs to be had.
Exactly.
When our trucks come in, we need to make sure that we are receiving that food safely as well. So taking temperatures of that and making sure we're storing things properly. Uh, so,
The right quantity, I'm sure that is expected to come in too. I'm sure
mhm.
that's important to keep
Yeah,
track of.
yeah. So that I think it pretty well covers the cooks. Then
Okay.
above them, I have the chef managers, and I've got three buildings as of now. Who knows, maybe more down the road. I'm excited to see. But I've got one in each building. One looks over show, one at division, one at Strong's, and I work more closely with those three and management above me than I do with the team on the floor. So what, especially with the complexity of Century and the
Mhm.
three buildings, it'd be a little different if I was just working in
One.
one building,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of executive chefs they just work in one restaurant. I'm essentially working in three restaurants. So, in a way, I have kind of structured that the chef manager is like, they're not exactly the executive chef,
Mm.
kind of how you would conceptualize it. Um, I've been working them more out of a cook role because a lot of, staffing's a huge thing. And when we're feeding 2,700 people a day,
Right.
we got to have a large team. And because we do have a large team, a number of different stations for multiple options and variety, we're in the sixth season too. People call out, so they get their hands involved a lot with the food at times as well. But I'm trying to work them more to be a general oversight to ensure that food quality is there, food safety is there, that we're on time. Food is ready to be served 10 minutes before we're open, that by having food ready 10 minutes before we're open, that we're stepping outside of the service line and we're looking from your guys' point of
Mm.
view, are we presenting ourselves well?
Right.
um, Essentially making sure that all of our ducks in a row, that we're looking good, that we're tasting good. Spoons are going into food and stuff like that.
Mhm.
As much as corporate dining might be seen lesser than maybe going out to eat, we really try to exemplify and try to bring in a fair number of qualities in terms of how we're preparing and serving our food so that it's somewhat comparable.
Right.
Um, it's not like your high school kitchen where you're walking in and you got your grandma potentially slopping on your mashed potatoes and gravy. Even though we might serve mashed potatoes and gravy, we want to make sure that it's presenting. We're trying to elevate that much more. So
It's a
that
higher quality to it.
exactly, yeah, and really priding ourselves in terms of how our hospitality is as well.
Mhm.
Like I said, we see you guys every day, so we want to make sure that you guys feel at home. So really,
We appreciate
yeah,
it.
absolutely. And then there's me, which I've talked a little bit. But in terms of what I do on a daily, then is like I say, I generally oversee the three chef managers, and for them, I'm providing a lot of resources in terms of because I generate the menus. Um, and like I was saying earlier, I'm not the type of chef that says it's my way or the highway. I really love collaboration.
Yeah.
It actually makes my job a little bit easier. But I don't do that passively to say I'm not worthy of doing this. I don't want to do this. But I have a passionate team. A team of, well, if there's six of us managers, there's 38 cooks and dishwashers front of house. So there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and I like to pick from each of them, like, what is something that you grew up with and
Mm.
love to eat. Um, what's your favorite dish you like to make at home? What is something that your grandma made that you haven't had in forever? What is something that we've served that we haven't done in a while? Or what's something that
Mm.
we served and how would you think we should do it different?
Sure.
So there's a lot of things. I really like to pull in from each of my teams, just who they are, what they're made of, and what we can all do as a collaborative to really promote our menu. Because the thing is if I were to try to do it all on my own, each of the three buildings have their own unique cultures, for that matter, too. Show each different than division, and division each different than Strong's. You can't just have the three, have the same menu. There's always an element of difference between the three of them. So it's
Mm.
always good to have that feedback. So like I say, I come up with the menus, I generate them, um, and then with that, once each week, I sit down with the chef managers and I discuss the recipes. Recipes are important following those because there's a fair number of people that do rely on nutritionals,
Mm.
caloric intake, salt, cholesterol, the whole works.
Right.
And that also does tie into allergens. But largely in that meeting, I discuss how I envision the menu to come out, and that's an opportunity for us to discuss as a team. If I'm coming forward with an idea, maybe they think that we could do it a little different, tweak it a little bit. So then we're all on the same page that we're executing the same menu. So
Mm.
say you want to go down to Strong's, you're going to get pretty close to the exact same offering that is back at the home office.
Oh, okay.
So that can be a tricky thing because as much as there are three like different cultures in each building, trying to make sure that we are consistent with
Right.
our offering. Like I said, so that you can go to either building and you're essentially going to get the same meal.
Mm.
It's being presented to you the same way at all three buildings. That I find one of the greater challenges is that we're able to do that because the same cook that say at the grill station will just throw out, for example, a Western burger with onion rings, barbecue, bacon, and cheddar.
Hmm.
Well, is that going to look the exact same way as it's coming over at Strong's?
Right.
So, really making sure that we're discussing those things, we're ironing out the details, or like at our entree line, how I envision the flow to go, the portioning to go, because it'd be unfortunate if you got what would be this is going to be just out of the water here, but you got 2 pounds worth of food at Urban, and you got half of the portion over at
Mm.
Strong's. That's a big no-no. So
Right.
I really work with them in terms of how I expect portioning,
Mm.
flavor, all of that to work out. Um, so not only do we worry about menus and recipes, but I look to them also for a number of safety concerns. Making sure that we're good with knives. We're compliant. Uh, their thermometers are all working. Temperature logs are being monitored. They're up to date. Um, oh boy, what else? There's a lot of safety. Yeah, uniforms are a big thing. Wearing the right shoes. So, and then I happen to also um, we have an element of the program called On the Go. So what's kind of been inspired, or at least what started it, was at least having something after hours other
Mm.
than just bagged food,
Sure.
getting your chips, your candy, and your soda pop, that you had something fresh. And what we had been doing for the longest time was just sandwiches and like side salads, fruit cups, cottage cheese, hard boiled egg. And it kind of occurred to me like, well, in this web page that I have, the system I work in to generate the menu, it like breaks it down what I'm serving each station per day throughout the week, and in there the recipes break that down.
Mm.
As long as I have it in this interface, I can assign a price point to it, and in this same web page, I can create a label. So as long as it's a recipe in the system, uh, this Western burger that, for example, that I'm serving at the grill station,
Mm.
we're only open till 1 o'clock. You know, that's kind of the beauty of the work that I'm in. A lot of restaurants, they're open, clear till 7 p.m., 10 p.m.,
Right.
whatever it might be, right? And we got you guys, a number of you guys working till 4, 5, and then there are people that work the late night shift.
Exactly.
So what are we doing for them?
Hmm.
We're only open for lunch up until 1 o'clock. So if I got on the menu, it's a recipe. I can put a price point on it. I can put it in the cooler. So there's an element of, you had a meeting going until 1:30. Well, you didn't quite get that Western burger like you were really hoping for. We can package that up for you to be able to take that home.
Mm.
So I work with that as well, the on the go program, making sure that that's being offered and provided just to expand our offerings beyond our service hours.
Right.
Um, so I also, well, oversee. I generally oversee. I expect the chef managers to really see all that come to fruition, and then I happen to be more of the helicopter, making sure that we're in compliant to culinary standards, safety standards, that we're meeting client expectations. I'm more in direct contact and conversation with the client.
Okay.
So I can, and then I also generally oversee ordering.
Okay.
I help with making sure that we're compliant with ordering. We got to stay within a certain confine for what is approved for vendors for us to bring in, that we're not deviating from that.
Sure.
Um, so yeah,
That's wonderful.
there's a good deal there. And then above me, general manager. Um, she is more of the direct contact between our corporate
Hmm.
from Urest and then the client, and she feeds that, funnels that.
Um,
So she's kind of like the chief delegator in a way, but she really does grapple a lot also with uh, guest communications. We're getting feedback, any complaints or anything like that. She's like the face of the company. She's public relations in a way, if you will, as well.
sure.
So, but and in terms of ladder from our scope here in Century, depending what you want to do, I mean, you could be more what we consider a regional director, where it's kind of doing what I'm doing, but on a front of house and back of house scale
Uh,
for a region. Um, there's a safety champion, so that's something that's been better instituted over the last couple of years. Usually, there's some form of safety coordinator in a lot of businesses that really target the general oversight of being compliant with safety standards.
mhm.
So there's that as well. Um, you can go into more of an in-depth executive chef role. There's different tiers in terms of pay grades and stuff like that. We've got broken down districts and regions, so it does get bigger and bigger. So what's nice is that even though I'm working here in Stevens Point, I can be shipped over to Chicago and essentially be doing the same line of work.
Mm.
Um, so we're kind of an expansive company.
Yeah.
So
Oh wow.
there's a lot of opportunity. Um, and then for us, yeah, we're largely based in the United States, but we are also around the world. I forget the number of countries. My boss would be ashamed of me, but uh,
Nobody listens to this, so it's
yeah.
okay.
But there's I think 7 different regions within. There's probably more within the U.S. So it's quite a web, a
Yeah.
network.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, the further up you go into culinary, you can. There's like, I don't know, probably another 5 tiers above me yet, if
Wow.
not more. I bet you there's more. So.
That's great. Well, thanks for sharing that and unpacking just yeah, the ladder and what that looks like, along
Mm-hmm.
with skills and everything for each tier. I think that was really helpful just to get
Mm-hmm.
a scope for those who may be listening or watching.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, food isn't quite as simple as you think, especially when you step out more of the confines of mom and pop.
Right.
Which, I mean, health services still have to come in and make sure you're in compliance, but especially when you get more into a corporate side of things, it gets it's not meddled per se, but it's definitely more intense
Mm,
to really make sure that we're not being fined, or we're not putting people in harm's way of illnesses. We really do have to be responsible in terms of the overall day-to-day production line of food from
absolutely.
beginning to end.
Absolutely.
That all comes from when the food comes in to the food goes out, and that it seems there's not a lot in the middle, but there's definitely a lot to be responsible for. Mm-hmm.
100%. Yeah. And you shared quite a bit of what your day to day looks like
Mm-hmm.
when you expressed the various tiers and so forth. Um, you touched on this, and I'm wondering. I know we live in a world now where technology seems to impact so many different aspects. In what ways? I know you mentioned a couple, but in what ways does technology impact your work?
Mm-hmm. I actually work with it quite in depth. Um, so as far as concerning me goes, anyway, I work a lot with the computer. I've got a couple different programs that I work with in terms of creating the menu, recipes, ordering, um, and then depending on who we order from, there's also, I've got different interfaces I'm supposed to work with that as well. We look a lot at waste as well, so that's another interface. And all of this, I'm the main, if you will, point of contact that I do respond to corporate on a number of things. Why are we high in this, or
Mm.
why aren't we doing that? And that's my responsibility to make sure that that I'm up to date with where we're at or where we're supposed to be at per corporate expectations, and to see that those standards are being implemented and enforced on the floor. Um, but I do have some involvement with like online ordering and stuff like that. Actually, I happen to be the one that we have an online ordering platform, and on the daily, whatever is on our menu, we offer online as well. So I do all the turning on and offs of all of that. So I have a pretty good understanding of that. Still learning.
Mhm.
It can be pretty complex depending what you want to drive out of it and what you really want to offer, especially in terms of customization.
Mm.
My GM, she does kind of hold my hand a little bit in it, because there's more of a front of house side of things that she handles, and I've been trying to learn a little bit of that too, because people get sick, and like I said, our company is big, and a lot of times we'll get called on to go help somewhere else. So if she's gone, at least I know a little bit of what needs to happen on her side of things. So
Great.
um, online ordering, yep, we get tickets that come through, um, along with the face to face and balancing that.
Mm.
The labels that I generate, those also have to scan. So I'm also in that online platform to make sure that I'm entering in the IDs correctly, that you go ahead, you just grab, scan, go. So, a lot of it, for at least what's expected of me, whether if that be from my team, my boss, or Century guests for that matter, is that everything is in order, in place. I have everything together so that the team can just run with the menu. They can
Mm.
just cook,
Great.
and that you guys can just come in, grab your food, and go.
That's wonderful.
So,
Yeah. Well, thanks for unpacking that too. So,
mm-hmm.
um, I want to steer the conversation a little bit more introspective. I
Hmm.
think you touched on bits and pieces of this. Um, but I guess, do you have, we'll start on the Debbie Downer side of things, but do you have any
You want the
regrets?
good news or the bad
Yeah, I
news?
know, right? We'll start bad and then we'll go up from there.
Sure.
But any regrets, I guess, about pursuing this out of all the different career paths that you could have chosen, food services, being an executive chef? Do you have any regrets about that?
Hmm. Regret's a kind of a difficult word, right? I think it's a little deep, kind of like hate. Hate's kind of a deep word. Do I really hate my job? Do I really regret what I do? No. I wouldn't necessarily say regret. Um, I will say though, I would say I'm a praying man to a good extent, and
Mm-hmm.
certainly I would believe that the Lord, like I say, the Lord has me where I am. Um, and you get to wonder some days, like, is the Lord really putting on me more than I can withstand? It is a lot, I'll admit. And it's not a regret whatsoever. I love working with the people I have on my team, and I love food. And I have kind of an increased love for food, since I'm the one kind of in the driver's seat. I'm saying this is the direction we're going. This is what I want for the menu. Yeah, it's regret. Yeah, I think it's just been difficult some days just to balance my
Sure.
time, especially having three buildings and wanting to be home to be a husband and a now father.
Mm-hmm.
That um, maybe it'd be easier to be lesser than myself, but I wouldn't trade it. No,
That's
no.
great. Well, I'm glad because I'm talking to someone who genuinely enjoys what he does.
Hmm.
80% of the time
Yeah.
it
And I
is.
think there's always an element of your job being difficult, and
Right.
there's you can't shy away from that. If life was always easy, like it's just unreasonable.
Exactly.
So
You wouldn't grow either.
no, and that's just it. And that's like I say, our team and a lot of people in corporate dining, as far as I understand, really doesn't have culinary degree. They don't have degrees, and we're all in some form of journey of growing and learning. And and I tell my team that if I'm not motivated to learn myself, I don't deem myself qualified to be in the position to serve this position anymore. So as long as it's expected of myself, by myself, to continue to learn and grow, I'm expecting them as well. So
Mm,
absolutely, the hardships that come with the job, I think they only refine us to really be who we are to be and who we ought to be, especially in a managerial position. If you're not growing, what's going on with your team? As your team, like, are you really leading a team?
mm,
And a lot of times with leadership, you have to roll with the punches, and take those lessons to heart. That we're always growing. Um, especially with food. Like, you look at how food was 50 years ago to where it is now. It has changed, and it's a cultural thing. And if we're not invested in terms of what's going on with the now too, you know, we've always
exactly.
got to be evolving for that matter too.
No
So
doubt.
absolutely.
That's
Hmm.
great. As far as if you were to pinpoint the most fulfilling aspect of what you do and then maybe the most challenging, could you single out one particular aspect? It's a little difficult.
I was asked this in an interview a couple of weeks ago.
Look at this.
So I find it ironic that you have it for me here too. It actually makes it a little easier for me to answering this because I already have an
Oh,
answer.
fantastic.
Uh,
Didn't know you prepared.
but I unintentionally so. Um, it's not the best answer because it's one answer for both of them. Okay, and I kind of touched on it a little bit.
Mhm.
But what makes my job, like, what I find like the most rewarding about my job, and what is equally as challenging, is that I have a large team.
Mm.
Um, as a team that we have now, we've got 44 team members. We're looking to grow that a little bit more at two. Um, turnover has always been a thing. Food service, that's pretty typical. We're getting to a point now where we've got a pretty solid team. Especially coming out of COVID, a lot of people were doing incentives to bring people in. We did that for a while, and we saw in a lot of number of businesses can empathize with this, that people came in, got their incentive, and left.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, but makes sense for the people that did it. Don't blame them. But because I have a large team, like, I'm really inspired by who they are as individuals, and all of them, they come from different backgrounds. We do have a couple people that come from culinary backgrounds.
Mm.
They've gone to school, they've done it, they've been places, and they're working for me. Like, this, you think they'd be someplace else, but no, they love what they do.
Mm.
Especially with corporate dining. A lot of corporations that we're in, they work from 7 a.m. till 4 p.m. So that kind of dictates when we work. A 6 to 2:30 schedule. I mean, who wouldn't want that?
Right.
So it is rewarding to have the number of people I have, because that it's inspiring for me, because it pushes me to be better, and then also to be inclusive of, where are you coming from, what skills are you presenting, what do you bring to the table, what makes you tick, um, because when they're excited about the food that we're offering on the menu, I'd rather see that than force my menu on them.
Right.
When they're my hands and feet, and they're directly, you know the hospitality is between them and the guest more than it is me and the guest. I want to make sure that they love making what they're serving.
Mm.
So I Maybe it's to my own demise, but I take a lot of feedback with all that in mind. On top of that, I guess maybe not on top, but on the other side of that, um, the what makes it challenging is that I do have 44 people on my team, and there are a lot of opinions.
Right?
There's a saying that may not be mentioned here in this podcast in terms of opinions go, but it's true that as long as I am as open and willing to take the time and to receive that, it does make my job a little bit more difficult. When you especially when we're truly open 3 days out of the week, Mondays and Fridays are what they are.
Mhm.
Um, there's not a whole lot of opportunity to really cycle in a lot of people's ideas, but not only ideas but personalities.
Mm.
You know, I if we were all the same, I wouldn't enjoy life. But it does bring those types of challenges as well. Um, so I'd say opinions, personalities, and then lastly, um, because I do oversee three buildings, I do oversee a lot of things. Sometimes we've had to turn over. We've got people calling out sick, and it's just the way it is.
Right.
Um, it's hard to manage my time and to really feel, and I'd say respectfully, the rest of my team to really feel that they're getting the time out of me that they need.
Mm.
I really make it a point to make it known, whether if it's by word or by my presence, that I appreciate what they do, and that I'm there to support them, to guide them, well, whatever guidance that might be, feedback, and the like. I mean, I've been there for almost 3 years now, and I've been spending most of my time at the home office. It's where I'm at, it's where my
Right.
desk is. But it does adversely affect the other two buildings where they don't
Mm.
always get to see me. So depending on where we're at with staffing, it really does dictate where I am supposed to be, because you want to set out the biggest fire first.
Right.
So I'm at least in that building, and I try to extend myself as best as possible to the other two. So I guess that's probably what's more challenging for me, is that I do see the three. I've got a lot of people that feed into that, personality wise, opinion wise, and then trying to break up my time so that each of them kind of get my love equally.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Exactly.
it does get to be difficult to time manage in that sense, and prioritize deadlines and stuff like that. So
Exactly.
try to take
Mm.
that all into account and try to be there for my team as best as possible.
Right.
So.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Final couple questions that I have for you is just general advice for someone who may be listening to this and maybe who's interested in pursuing a similar route or just getting a feel for the food services industry. Um, I'm curious. You unpacked a lot of great points just in what you've said so far.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people may be concerned about some of the practical items such as education,
Mm-hmm.
salary, can it support a family?
Mm-hmm.
You talked a lot about the day to day, but I guess is there something that you would share with someone in terms of just advice, real world experience
Mm-hmm.
that would maybe persuade them either to go this route or maybe something you've learned along the way that would maybe steer them the other direction.
Sure. I think that's a beautifully worded question. Food service isn't for everybody, but I also agree that everyone should try food service.
Mm.
Um, I think there is an element in today's society that doesn't understand what it takes to be in food service. And because of that, those that do work in food service or have worked in food service might no longer want to work or are no longer working for food service, just because there's not an understanding and appreciation for what does happen
Mm.
on the food service side of things. But as far as being interested, like I said, I'd encourage at least everybody to try it. I think that would get a level of empathy for what does happen. But if you're kind of on the fence of doing it, not doing it, I'd do it. Um, there's no better way of knowing whether it's the Lord's will for you than just to do it.
Hmm.
And it's not to say that you're going against it by going that route. Uh, Certainly, the Lord will direct your steps so long as you're submitting to His will. So, um, I would encourage you to do it. There's no pain in it. I mean, it might require depending on who you're working for, some hard hours. But at least for me, like it was really rewarding to put in the amount of work that it took. Um, because we're producing for a lot of people, so you're go go go, and then taking pride over your work. It doesn't have to be food, if you're really finding yourself in a vocation that you feel that you have a sense of pride in what you're doing, um, that you're fulfilled by what you're doing. That is what you should be doing. um, I happen to find it in food because I love getting my hands on it. I love being innovative. I try a little different things. Ask my wife with my pancakes. That's another story. But my big thing, especially when I was on the floor, was just selling myself to the guest. Um, I'd like to think that I make pretty good food myself, not being arrogant here, but I think I really pride myself more in terms of hospitality.
Mm.
How am I interacting with the guest? My boss says, and I understand this philosophy too, that why do you go to your favorite restaurant? Do you go because of the food, or do you go because of how they make you feel?
Mm.
And for the most part, I'd like to say it's because it's how they make you feel.
Right.
Certainly, food goes with it, but if you really assess, deep down why you go, how are the waitresses? How do you feel you're treated? How are the bathrooms? How's the environment? Is it well kept, maintained? Does it seem welcoming and inviting? The ambiance, all of that plays into account. So I really love being interactive with the guest. So, um, if you're considering food service, I would just do it. Um, and if you're kind of feeling hesitant, still do it. Give it a year. Depending on the restaurant you're in, the program that you're in, could give you a bit of a different taste.
Mhm.
I'll admit. I never worked in a McDonald's, a Hardee's, or anything like that to know what those environments are like. But by golly, you have people that work there too that love what they do.
Exactly.
So it's not to say you can't work at McDonald's all your life. A lot of times too, it's those types of jobs where it's kind of thought of, put your kid there, encourage your kid to work there a couple of years before they go off to college, and you got to get out of food service because you can't afford a living. And I'd say for the most part that can be true. I happen to strike gold
Mm.
with where I'm at in corporate dining. They start you off pretty good, and as long as you're eager and willing, you do a good job, you love what you do, you have a positive attitude, you're really promoting what's on the menu, you're really exuding that you love what you do, and that you're really respectful to the guest. The more that you do all those things, and you do all those things well, especially somebody in my position in management sees that, and by golly, I honestly think I'm at where I'm at now because management before me saw that in me,
Mm.
that I loved what I did. I did it with a smile on my face, even though the days may have been long, hard,
Mhm.
and sucked.
Mhm.
Some days, you can't just be too immersed in what is bad in the job or what is hard about the work. But at the end of the day, do you find yourself passionate? Like, do you still
Mm.
find yourself passionate in what you do? Are you still taking pride and ownership of the work that you do? Because at the end of the day, if the work that you're putting out isn't quality, and you're not truly honoring the Lord in it, then why are you doing it in the first place?
Mm.
Either that, or why is your heart the way that it is?
Right.
Is that a you problem, or is that a work problem? So it'd be fair to assess that as well.
Exactly.
But just having the drive and the ambition, um, that'll take you a long ways. I can advocate that for myself. Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Hmm.
I've learned so much just in this time. Yeah, this has been really insightful for me, and I'm sure everybody listening to, just find so many pockets of wisdom and hopefully some guidance too, just as they're evaluating their own career options,
Hmm.
whether you're in high school or college, or maybe even looking for a career change. That's the
Hmm.
intent of why I'm doing this, is just to have these conversations. 'Cause I don't think we talk about it enough, and we spend so much time doing
Hmm.
it. So I appreciate you sharing, peeling the layers of the onion back, as it were. Sorry to get one more in, but no, I appreciate you peeling back the layers, and just letting us see a glimpse into your world and
Hmm.
what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy as much, and yeah, thank you for being on the podcast.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, and for the rest of you, this is the first episode of Real Career Talk, but it certainly won't be the last. Have a great rest of your day.